name is Anil Seth, and Anil suggests that while each of us believe that our perception of reality is reality, he argues that our brain doesn't actually show us reality. Our brain shows us a rough approximation of reality based on our lived experience. Information. And at the same time, in our heads, we have information. And then it kind of mushes together, and that creates our perception of reality. So that's where you can see, two people can see the same exact thing, but perceive it in two different ways. Mitchell, has your work ever kind of delved into these types of issues of perception?
It does so indirectly, but when reflecting on this question, I was thinking actually to like an earlier career of mine of competitive snowboarding, where I would often try to visualize a difficult trick in my head before doing it in real life. Made it a lot easier to land. But there were a lot of cases where I couldn't do it in my head, and then I tried to imagine like my favorite snowboarder doing it for me, and that helped kind of create this reality that I could then perform in shortly after. In our work, I think at Happy City, we see it often being reinforced at the institutional level, where you have homogenous organizations, or generally homogenous organizations that have a lot of similar ideas going on within the group, and they're creating systems that reinforce this version of reality, and I'll call it a shared version of reality because many of these people have the same ideas on which they're coming from. And a little bit like the automatic thinking, these systems tend to reinforce themselves over time without any sort of disruption. And I would say empathic disruption is probably the best way to help recognize these gaps and address them in positive ways. So what we often do is try to serve as detectives to determine a version of reality that also exists, and that we can help to highlight among our clients and demonstrate these alternative approaches that may help to better understand the world around them and the people that they are trying to serve.
Rachel, I think like in your work in diversity and inclusion, it kind of wraps around this idea, right? The idea that different people with different lived experiences can have different perspectives of the same issue.
Yeah, you see that a lot. Like I almost see it as your lived experience actually acts as a filter over reality. So even if you believe that there is some sort of objective thing or objective truth that's happening around you, our connection to that objective truth is always filtered by our various lived experiences. And those lived experiences are, filtered by gender, by where you grew up, your class, education, religion, cultural norms, your skin color, everything. And part of that also is how the world reacts back at you due to those filters as well. So, what someone might experience walking home from work might be very different depending on, even their gender, right? Like women may notice that area is a dark alley where someone else, a male might walk right through that and not think anything of it. Same thing with traveling. Like you'll, ask any of your female friends, if you're a male, like what precautions women take when traveling alone. It's a very much longer list oftentimes than it is for solo male travelers, as an example. So they're just, and that also means that you're being distracted by different things. So you're looking out for different things depending on your lived experience. But I also think that there's an interesting space around that where, the reality too is that minority spaces, whether that's due to, race or ethnicity or language or gender, etc., are constantly navigating the reality that has been set by a dominant culture. So that's another space where the reality can be set by those who have the power to set and determine what normal is, right? So oftentimes those in the dominant space don't even realize that they're living with like a predetermined reality, while those who are in a less dominant space are very hyper aware of that as they navigate through that dominant reality. So for sure, you see it come up all the time. And I think one of those things around going back to that space around thinking automatically or thinking deliberately is just simply recognizing that your reality is based on a whole set of unique filters that make up who you are.